In the year 2000, a small, money-losing company walked into a boardroom in Dallas and offered to sell itself for around $50 million. The people across the table almost laughed them out of the room. That company was Netflix. Today it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars, vastly more than the movie rental giant that turned it down ever was. So here's the question that should keep every CEO up at night. How do you make a decision that looks smart for every reason on paper and still end up catastrophically wrong? Keep that number in your head because we're going to come back to it. Everybody knows the punchline. Blockbuster said no, Blockbuster died, Netflix won. But the story you've heard is misleading in one important way, and the real mistake wasn't the one everyone points at. So stick with me, because by the end of this you'll see the trap that's quietly running inside some of the biggest companies on earth right now, including maybe the one that signs your paycheck. To understand why Blockbuster laughed, you have to understand how untouchable it felt. Around its peak in the mid-2000s, Blockbuster had roughly 9,000 stores and tens of thousands of employees around the world. Walking into that store on a Friday night was a ritual for millions of families. Grabbing a movie, arguing over what to watch, the smell of popcorn by the register. And here's the part worth sitting with. The store wasn't just a way to sell the product. The store was the product, which is exactly what made it so hard to give up. Now put the two companies side by side around the year of that meeting. Blockbuster was pulling in billions of dollars a year and running the show. Netflix was a tiny DVD-by-mail startup, mailing red envelopes to a few 100,000 people and losing money doing it. On paper, this wasn't David and Goliath. This was Goliath and a guy Goliath had barely heard of. And that gap is exactly why what happened next made sense to everyone in the room. Here's the part that's easy to miss. Blockbuster wasn't run by idiots. It was run by smart people optimizing a machine that was still winning. And that's the trap. Dominance is the most expensive blindfold there is. When your current business is printing money, every signal you trust is telling you to protect it. My read is that this isn't a story about a dumb decision at all. It's a story about a perfectly rational decision made inside a broken set of incentives. So let's actually go into the room. Around 2000, Netflix co-founders Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph flew down to Blockbuster to pitch a partnership. The idea was simple. Netflix would run Blockbuster's online rental brand, and Blockbuster would promote Netflix inside its thousands of stores. The reported asking price to just buy them outright was around $50 million. Two companies, one handshake away from a completely different history. By Randolph's own account in his book, That Will Never Work, the Blockbuster team could barely hide what they were thinking. Online rental, in their eyes, was a niche, a hobby for a very small crowd of tech people. They weren't hostile, they were amused, and the founders flew home knowing they'd just been politely dismissed by the most powerful name in the business. Now here's a contrarian take that matters. That $50 million number gets thrown around to make Blockbuster's leadership look like fools. But be honest, around the year 2000, paying tens of millions for an unprofitable company in an unproven market was not an obvious yes. The failure wasn't the price. The failure was the mental model. Blockbuster looked at Netflix and saw a website. Hastings, arguably, looked at Netflix and saw a way to sell people out of the store forever. But here's the part nobody talks about. Blockbuster wasn't just protecting its stores. It was protecting a habit it had monetized. And the hook was you, forgetting to return a tape. Because underneath the family-friendly brand sat one of the most quietly profitable features in retail history, and it was built on your guilt. Late fees. Around the peak of the model, they reportedly generated on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars a year for Blockbuster, with estimates often cited near $800 million. That was widely described as somewhere around a sixth of the company's revenue. Read that again. Close to a sixth of the business came from customers being penalized. The most hated thing about Blockbuster was also one of the most important lines on its income statement. Now look at what Netflix was selling. The exact opposite. A flat monthly subscription, no due dates, no late fees, keep the movie as long as you want. And that's the moment this stops being a story about a better product and becomes a story about a trap. Because Netflix wasn't just competing with Blockbuster. Netflix was attacking one of the single lines of revenue Blockbuster could least afford to give up. And this is the core insight of the whole story. Blockbuster was structurally boxed in when it came to copying Netflix. When it finally pushed a no late fees campaign around 2005, it reportedly cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars and set off internal fights and legal blowback, including settlements with states over how the promotion was marketed. So say it plainly. It's brutally hard to disrupt yourself when your best revenue line is the very thing your customers hate most. That's why incumbents don't ignore the future because they're blind. They ignore it because the present is still paying the bills. Blockbuster couldn't fully become Netflix without cannibalizing its own cash cow, and no room full of executives optimizing this quarter's numbers is eager to volunteer for that. The future was arguably obvious. It just wasn't survivable on the current spreadsheet. Now watch the two companies split in opposite directions. In 2007, Netflix launched streaming, while DVD by mail was still its main business. Think about that. It willingly started undercutting the exact product that was paying its salaries. Meanwhile, Blockbuster hit leadership turmoil. Its CEO, John Antioco, departed in 2007 after a clash over strategy and pay, and whatever digital momentum existed quietly stalled. By 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. It was later broken up and liquidated, and within a few years it was down to essentially one lone franchise store still keeping the lights on. Thousands of locations, decades of dominance, reduced to a single shop and a nostalgia photo op. That's how fast the fall was once it started. Here's the sharper lesson. Everybody says adapt or die, but I'd argue that's not quite it. Netflix's real superpower wasn't foresight. It was a willingness to kill its own winning product before somebody else did. Blockbuster protected, Netflix cannibalized, and Netflix has since reinvented itself more than once, from DVDs to streaming to a full-blown studio to advertising and gaming. Reinvention wasn't a one-time act of genius. It looks a lot more like a deliberate culture. So let's finally settle the question from the top. Was saying no the real mistake? Netflix today is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, vastly more than Blockbuster ever was. In raw terms, that $50 million no became one of the most expensive words in business history. But here's the twist, and it's the whole point of this video. The no itself was actually pretty defensible. Because the harder to forgive part came after the meeting. Blockbuster had cash. It had the brand. It had thousands of stores and years of runway to build its own version of Netflix, and it lost anyway. Saying no to buying Netflix didn't kill Blockbuster. Refusing to truly become Netflix did. The famous meeting wasn't the mistake. The meeting was just a symptom of a company that couldn't bear to hurt its own numbers. And if you think this is ancient history, look around. Kodak engineers built one of the first digital cameras in the 1970s, and the company largely sat on it because film was too profitable to threaten. Established taxi operators leaned on decades of dominance while rideshare apps ate into their business. Same pattern, different decade. Many of these giants had the technology or the chance. What they often lacked was permission to hurt their current numbers. So zoom out. Disruption almost never looks like a genius outsider versus a clueless giant. More often it looks like a rational giant defending a profitable habit, right up until that habit becomes a cage. The unsettling part isn't that these companies were stupid. It's that they were smart, and it happened anyway. Which means the real skill isn't spotting dumb companies. It's spotting the smart ones quietly protecting their own late fee. So here's a way to think about this, not as advice, but as a lens. The next time an organization defends something because it's the biggest moneymaker, it's worth asking whether it's protecting an asset or feeding a habit its customers are already trying to quit. Because Blockbuster didn't lose to a better website. It lost to a company willing to make its own best product obsolete. If this changed how you think about business, subscribe. There's a new breakdown every week.